All right, today we're going to be looking at lesson 1.8, and we're going to be looking at how are multiplication and division related to one another. To begin, we're going to talk about the fact that multiplication and division are what we call inverse operations. So that means that they are going to undo one another, right? So we can apply the same idea to addition and subtraction as well. So if we had 3 plus 4, then we know that that is going to equal 7. Well, if we take 7 and subtract the 3, we're going to be left over with 4, right? So we see that by subtracting 3, we're left with 4, which was part of our original addition problem. Addition and subtraction are inverse operations. We should be able to recognize that multiplication and division are the same thing. So if we have two groups of 6, then we get a total of 12. 2 times 6 equals 12. Well, let's say that I have 12 people and I want to put them into two groups. Well, how many people are going to end up in each group? And the answer is going to be 6. So hopefully we see here that division and multiplication are opposites, right? They're going to undo one another. And that's what we call an inverse operation. Now, in addition to understanding that, it's really important that for today's lesson, we understand the distributive property because we're going to use ideas from the distributive property to help us solve our division problems. So remember the distributive property, we talked about it back in lesson 1.3. It tells me that if I have, say, like 4 times 32, that I can take this number 32 and I can break it up into two pieces that when added back together equal 32. I like to make sure that one of those numbers ends in 0 because it's easier to multiply by numbers that end in 0. So we know that 30 plus 2 is the same as 32. Well, we have 4 times 30 plus 2. Now, the distributive property tells me that I have to take this 4 and I have to distribute it across this set of parentheses. So 4 times 30, right? I have to multiply it by the 30, but it's the answer, or the question up here wasn't 4 times 30. The question was 4 times 32. So I can't just multiply it by the 30. I also need to multiply it by the 2. So I get 4 times 2. All right, well, here in the middle, I have this addition symbol. So I need to add these two pieces together. So now I do my math. 4 times 30, well, 4 times 3 is 12. I'm going to switch back to a black pen and change it to a little bit smaller so it's easier to fit more stuff. All right, so 4 times 3 is 12, and then I need to tack on my 0 there because it's 30. And then I add that to 4 times 2. Well, 4 times 2 is 8. 120 plus 8 equals 128, right? So again, we took the number 32 and we broke it into two pieces that when added together equaled 32. Then we multiplied our 4 by each of those pieces. And once we got our products from those two multiplication problems, we added them together to get our final answer. So that's the distributive property. If you need to go back and review lesson 1.3 to understand a little bit better, then go ahead and do that. All right, let's move on to the rest of our lesson. So here we have a problem, and this problem is, let's see where we can find it. Oh, that's not what I want, is it? This problem says that Joel and 5 friends collected 126 marbles. They share the marbles equally. How many marbles will each person get? Right, so we have 5 friends plus Joel, so that's 6 people sharing 126 marbles. Whenever we talk about people sharing things, fair sharing things, then hopefully we start to think about division. So our problem here is 126 divided by 6. Switch that back to a small one, right? So we're going to use this array to help us to find the answer to this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look here and I'm going to kind of find my 6 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? So here are my 6 rows. Now I could just start counting on and say 6 and then 12 and 18, but that kind of is difficult, right? So instead, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to count out 10 because I know that 6 times 10 is going to be 60, right? So here's 3 and 6. Let's see, 3 more is 9. So from here to here, this is 6 by 10. And I know that 6 times 10 is 60. Well, if I fair shared 126 marbles, right, and I gave out 60, I could subtract and see how many are left. 6 minus 0 is 6. 12 minus 6 is also 6. So it looks like I have enough to put together 10 more, right? So I'm going to say, let's see, there's 3, 9, or 3, 6, 8, 9, and 10, right? So here we are from here to here. This is also 10, right? So 6 by 10, if I counted up all of those squares, that's what I would see. And 6 times 10 equals 60, right? So I fair shared those 60 marbles between Joel and his friends. And now I have 6 marbles remaining. Well, that means that everybody gets 1 more marble, right? So this one right here is 1 times 6. So now the question is like, how do I put all of this back together so that it kind of makes sense, right? Well, what I need to think to myself is here I multiplied 6 times 10, and here I multiplied 6 times 10, and here I multiplied 1 times 6. So let's put that on a new page, right? So 6 times 10, 6 times 10, and we're going to flip the order on that last one. So it's not 1 times 6, it's 6 times 1. Well, this sort of starts to look a little bit like the distributive property that we just talked about back there, right? We have parentheses, we have a common factor in each set of parentheses, and we're multiplying it by a different number. So just like with the distributive property, right, how we could pull numbers apart, how we pulled this 30 apart into 30 plus 2, right, we can also go in the reverse direction, right? So we can start to put numbers back together. So if we pull the 6 out of each of these sets of parentheses, we get a 10 from here, a plus 9, a 10 from here, plus a 1 from over there, right? So 10 plus 10 plus 1 is 21, right? So 6 times 21 equals 126. Now, that can be kind of confusing and difficult to completely understand, right? So let's take a look at it back here in our picture, right? Remember, we broke this first section up, right? And we'll kind of color it red up here in the corners, right? We broke this up into an array that was 6 boxes tall by 10 boxes across. And we got 60 boxes out of that. Then we broke this one up into a 6 tall by 10 across, and we got 60 boxes out of that. And then this last one, of course, was 6 tall, but only 1 wide, which gave us 6. So if we add together 60 plus 60 plus 6, we get 126. So if we add together our factors that we multiplied by 6, which are 10, 10, and 1, then we get our answer. And 6 times 21 equals 126. So that means that each of the 6 friends will get 21 marbles. We're going to look at another one. We're actually going to skip this one. We're going to do one that doesn't, well, actually, we're going to go ahead and do this one. So here we have Brad. He's got 72 cars that he puts into 4 equal groups. So we get our division problem of 72 divided by 4. Now, when I start to think about this, right, I want to think about 4 times what equals 72, right? And I'm going to take this what, and I'm going to break it into 2 numbers that can be added back together, right? But I need to multiply them both by my 4. right? And I need to figure out what are these numbers that fill in these spaces. Well, if I start off by thinking, well, what's an easy number that I can multiply by 4? It's a little bit bigger. I'm going to think of the number 10. So 4 times 10 equals 40, right? So whatever this is has to be added to 40 to equal 72. So 72 minus 40, let's do that over here. So 72 minus 40, that leaves me with 32. So I can do that right here, right? So 40 plus 32 equals 72. So now all I have to think is 4 times what equals 32? Well, 4 times 8 equals 32. So if I add these two numbers back together, I get 18. And again, we can demonstrate that over here, right? So this array is already 4 tall, right? So I'm just going to count out 10 across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So here's my 4 times 10, which equaled 40. Now I need to count out 8 more columns. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 4 times 8 equals 32, right? So 40 plus 32 equaled 72. So 10 plus 8 equals 18, which gives me my answer. All right, so I'm going to take care of this one, but I'm going to set it up just a little bit differently because sometimes when we set things up differently, it makes a little bit more sense to different people. So here, I'm going to rewrite this, right? We know that multiplication and division are inverse operations. So I'm going to say that 4 times something equals 60. The first thing I'm going to multiply my 4 by is I want to multiply it by kind of a bigger number that ends in a 0. Well, 60 is not a huge number, so I can't pick a huge number here. So I'm just going to pick 10. And 4 times 10 equals 40. Now, if I subtract that 40 from the 60, then I am left with 20. And then I think to myself, well, 4 times what equals 20? And I know that 4 times 5 equals 20. So now all I have to do is take these two factors and add them together. And 10 plus 5 is 15. So 4 times 15 equals 60, which means that if we come back up here, 60 divided by 4 equals 15. This is really what the way I recommend laying this whole thing out. So let's take a look at one final one. I know I said the last one would be the final one, but we're going to try one more. We're going to set it up different. Remember, we're going to say that we have 6 times what equals 144. We're going to start off by multiplying our factor of 6 by some multiple of 10, right? It can be 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever one you think will work. I'm just going to go ahead and do 10 again because I know that 10 times 60 is going to be small enough and it's easy and manageable for me. So 6 times 10 is 60. I'm going to subtract that from my 144. That gives me a grand total of 84 left. 84 is bigger than 60, so I can multiply 6 times 10 again. Oops, I kind of crammed that together there, didn't I? Let's see if we can move it down. Oh, we can. Good. Right, so 6 times 10 equals another 60, which I'm going to subtract one more time. 4 minus 0 is 4. 8 minus 6 is 2. So now I need to think to myself, well, 6 times what equals 24? And hopefully we recognize that 6 times 4 equals 24. Now, to finish this whole thing off, right, this is where we've got to take these factors from this column and we need to just add them together, right? 10 plus 4 is 24. So that means that 6 times 24 equals 144, which also means that 144 divided by 6 is, oh goodness, is 24. I don't know why it does that, but sometimes it does. All right, That is our lesson today, relating that distributive property to division to help us define the quotient. Hopefully, you have a good understanding of this and are able to work through the problems. If you have any questions, let me know.